Today on Flashpoints, Julian Assange, Countdown to Freedom, Season 2. A continuing collaboration between Live on the Fly with Randy Credico and Flashpoints National News. On the show today, we'll be joined by Christine Assange, Julian Assange's mom and proud and militant mom. Mrs. Assange will be joining us from Australia. And we'll also be joined by former CIA whistleblower John Carrico. I'm Dennis Bernstein with Randy Credico. All this straight ahead on Flashpoints. Stay tuned. And you're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. My name is Dennis Bernstein. You are listening to your daily investigative news magazine. Today, we continue our collaboration with Live on the Fly with Randy Credico coming out of New York City. And it is a series that he started last year, as we mentioned, Julian Assange, Countdown to Freedom, Season 2. Randy, welcome back. What's going on today? Sort of help us set up what's coming up. Randy.
Hey.
Are you there, Randy?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go on.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Dennis, for doing this today and for participating. You were there for the last 4 or 5 episodes of Countdown to Freedom, Julian Assange. Last year, we interviewed Mrs. Assange, we interviewed Julian, and many others. And so this is a natural, this collaboration, and this is really a very important matter. Mr. Assange is definitely under attack. He's being persecuted. And you are one of the few out there, journalists, who has been steadfast in your support. You see other journalists kind of falling by the wayside and collaborating against him. So thank you very much. It's been a very brave effort of yours to maintain your commitment to supporting journalists.
Why did you choose to do this multi-year series?
Well, because Julian Assange is a hero. Julian Assange, I look at him the same way I would look at William Lloyd Garrison or Elijah Lovejoy or any of the abolitionist journalists from the 19th century. He's speaking truth to power. He's giving us information that nobody has given us in the mainstream media. You give it to us, and others that try, Robert Perry and John Pilger, but it's few and far between, and we should be there supporting him, because if something happens to him, if he goes down, it is a domino effect from there. The rest of us go down, and I use myself loosely in that because I've only been a journalist for a year and a half with my radio show, Live on the Fly. So it's very dire if something were to happen to Julian Assange. And this is extremely important right now because the intelligence community continues. He's got a bullseye on his head inside an embassy in London, and every journalist in the world should be circling the wagons around Julian Assange. And that's the reason why I started the show and why I continue to speak out on his behalf.
Randy, and one more thing. You have become the butt of the corporate mainstream Russiagators, I call them now, who have been pushing this phony operation to get Trump for the wrong reasons, shall we say.
Right.
Do you have any regrets? You've been subpoenaed because of your programming that you've done around this and with Julian Assange. Do you have any regrets now that you're actually being called before Congress, having to face some very serious attacks?
No, absolutely not. I would do it again and again and again. I look at the Hollywood 10 and those people that stood up against the HUAC committee. That's how they inspire me. I'm not on that level, but of course I would do this. I have no regrets whatsoever, and I, still am under subpoena, and I don't know what's going to become of that. But people, hopefully, it will encourage others to stand up against this Russiagate phony investigation. Unfortunately, some of the mainstream or so-called progressive outlets, Mother Jones, for instance, has jumped on the bandwagon. It is a false lead. There are many reasons to go after Trump. This is not the one. They are empty emptying the gas tank right now, as it were, on this investigation.
Okay, you're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. That's the voice of Randy Credico. This is a collaboration between Flashpoints National and Randy Credico's amazing series, Live on the Fly with Randy Credico. And now we're going to take it to Australia, where we are joined by Mrs. Julian Assange. Mrs. Assange, it is good to have you back on this collaboration between Flashpoints and Live on the Fly. Welcome back to America.
Hi, Dennis. Thanks for having me, and thank you for taking on Randy's journalism when he was targeted for speaking out against the injustice against Julian.
Well, tell us, let's for folks who didn't hear our last interview, which was very moving when we were speaking with you, give us just your update in terms of what's going on and your feelings, your response to it.
What's going on with Randy?
With Julian? With Julian Assange.
I mean, yep. Look, as Wikileaks is moving further into exposing the deep state, and in particular the CIA with the Vault 7 and Vault 8 publications, the political persecution is intensifying, and they're now moving to lean on people who would normally support Julian. And they're doing the same, I think, with the Trump administration. I'm not a supporter of Trump or Clinton. I'm completely just objective about it. But it would appear that anyone that stands up for the deep state, they're having a go at. And that's a great concern because that's totally undermining American democracy.
How would you characterize, and please take a minute to do this, how would you characterize what Julian Assange does, what the work of WikiLeaks has been, and some of its impact? Give us your sense of what happened there.
Well, I think facts are always good when you're passing an opinion. WikiLeaks has been publishing for 11 years. It is completely 100% funded by the public, unlike many news media who are funded by corporations. So they're responsible to the public. They have had an 11-year, 100% uncontested document accuracy record with over 10 million documents and have never had to retract a story. So on the facts, WikiLeaks publishes the truth. There's no contesting that. They published against both Democrat and Republican administrations, so they are objective. They have revealed more in their short time as publisher, relatively short time, than all other publications put together in reference to how power really operates, not how we're told it operates, this party against this party, but how it really operates, which is the shadow government behind both parties, the billionaires, the intelligence firms, the departments involved with defence, Pentagon, US State Department. The private US contractors make millions of dollars, billions of dollars out of war, and now increasingly the media, who are owned by them as well. So WikiLeaks has exposed to the world the shadow power behind the power that we are told operates. And that is extremely important because we can't fix problems unless we know the cause of them. That's what Julian states. WikiLeaks only publishes documents that it receives. It doesn't hack. It also has a tight authorisation procedure on those documents, which it maintains its record for pristine publishing. And it only publishes in the public's interest to know, so it doesn't publish gossip. It publishes things of importance for ethical reasons. And the fact that it is fully funded by the public and gets the best scoops shows that it's also completely trusted by whistleblowers. And for all those reasons, it is being targeted.
You're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio. I want to bring in Randy Credico, but before I do, Mrs. Assange, were you surprised to see the way in which Randy has been targeted. He's become the middleman, the key middleman between everything in Russiagate and collusion. Are you surprised about this sort of broad brushing of Randy?
No, I was expecting it because it's become very clear that if you stand up to support WikiLeaks, you will be targeted if you stand up loud enough, which is all the more reason everyone should stand up. Now, Randy's still alive, as am I, as am a whole lot of other people who've stood up. Randy was particularly courageous because he was pretty much on his own. And many people worldwide now really admire what he's done. He not only told the truth about what happened to Julian and WikiLeaks, the truth that no one else would print. He did it week after week. He was willing to lose his job over it. He was willing to be subpoenaed by the US Intelligence Committee for it. And in the middle of that, he publishes photos with himself with a WikiLeaks coffee cup. I think it's just brilliant. I love him. And when someone like Randy stands up and is still living, and when Julian stands up and is still alive, although persecuted, they give the world an example of courage that we should all be emulating. And maybe we can't stand up as bravely as they do, but we can support them. We can get behind them. We can fund their legal campaigns. We can get on Twitter and support them. We can admonish our representatives for persecuting them.
Again, you're listening to a special collaboration between Flashpoints National News and Randy Credico's Live on the Fly coming out of New York City. And I am delighted to be a part of this collaboration. Randy, it is good to have you with us. You want to jump in? I know you have some questions for Mrs. Assange.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to you, Dennis, and to you, Christine, for your support through my the last 3 months of this kind of weird ordeal with the Senate Intel Committee, because you have taken to Twitter and you've been really, really vehement in your support, and it's been very helpful. Let me just, we have Dennis has been a huge supporter. He's been there from the very start. He's collaborated with me on this. And I was talking about this earlier. And when you look at some of these other organizations, you look at Mother Jones, or you look at freedom of the press, outlets like that who have abandoned Julian Assange. What is your feeling about that?
Well, it's part of the general sort of Silicon Valley billionaires bankrolling journalism problem. Freedom of the Press Foundation was actually set up by Julian and a number of others concerned to get donations to WikiLeaks without political pressure after the banking blockade was launched against them by the US government through various financial organisations like PayPal. And things were going along fine. They were processing US donations. It was giving donors some anonymity, and it was there as a protection for WikiLeaks and to get the donations to them. But at a certain point, which always happens, I call it Dorothy follow the yellow brick road, someone with money comes in via the back door. And in this case, it was a multi-billionaire called Pierre Omidyar, who was the founder of, what's that called? PayPal. He was on the board of PayPal. eBay, right. eBay. He was also on the board of PayPal and didn't speak up when PayPal blocked WikiLeaks donations originally, which is why Freedom of the Press Foundation was set up. Now he's involved in the Freedom of the Press Foundation by giving money. It's part of his funding a lot of media organisations. Now, this fellow is a big Democrat donor. He loathes Trump. He's actually gone on to Twitter to say endorsing Donald Trump immediately disqualifies you from any position of public trust. So, of course, once WikiLeaks exposed the DNC and Hillary Clinton with their own signed leaked documents from their own inside whistleblower, this Pierre Omidyar is obviously not very happy about that and starts to lean on Freedom of the Press Foundation to cut off WikiLeaks funding, which is what they've done. is also a newcomer to the foundation with this fellow called Micah Lee, who's become the director. And he came from Omnidar's venture, First Look Media. He was a techie there. And he's now been put as the director of Freedom of the Press Foundation. He moonlights after hours as a troll smearing Julian, just constantly, every day, as a rapist, a fascist, a liar, a Nazi, and he calls WikiLeaks supporters racist and misogynist. You can't trust WikiLeaks publications, and so on it goes. This happens a lot, that you get, whether it's a charity, whether it's a human rights organisation, NGO, and now various Freedom of the Press foundations. They depend on donations from the public, and when they're getting a little low, they allow these billionaires to bankroll them, and then they call a tune. So it's a great concern that what was initially a very good enterprise with some good people on it is now being silenced and in fact moved to attack WikiLeaks. But WikiLeaks has its own funding. You can donate to WikiLeaks, either go onto the WikiLeaks website, wikileaks.org, or go to imwikileaks.org, and you can donate to them there. I would, given the co-option of a lot of these Freedom of the Press organisations, I would actually suggest that people find a small media that they think is trustworthy and donate directly to them. Don't donate to these foundations, these types of foundations, because they're getting co-opted. This Pierre Omniadar, goodness me, he gave $100,000 to the Never Trump PAC, and he's donated millions of dollars to various other ones. And he's not the only one. These Silicon Valley guru billionaires, you've got Jeff Bezos from Amazon. You know about him, eh?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, well, he's bought the Washington Post, and for $250 million, along with its $600 million CIA contract. Now, he's donated $1 million to Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, and this Pierre Omniadar has also given money to them. So what appears to be happening is, as the old media is dying, these new Silicon Valley billionaires are either starting up or buying up, and then starting with some of the good journalists from the dying old media. And they're no better. They're no better than the old media. They've got their own political reasons for doing things, and this is why WikiLeaks is different. And some of the smaller media, like Consortium News, I've got a lot of time for Consortium News. Some of the smaller media, you know, they heard this saying, small is beautiful. Look, I really think there's something in that, particularly when it comes to media, because if the funding is coming from the people, there's way less pressure to push something politically one way or the other.
That's wikileaks.org.
We can give the address. Okay.
Okay, wikileaks.org if people want to find out more about WikiLeaks and see the work that they've done, most recently Vault 7. And so you have these Silicon Valley giants, Facebook and Twitter, you have eBay and others of that nature. It seems like they are now collaborating with the intelligence community. Do you think it's going to get worse?
I think it's inevitable unless the people kick back against it, Randy. I think, look, there's an old saying called power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I don't care whether you're a Buddhist, a Christian, an Islamist, Silicon Valley billionaire. If you get or Catholic Church, if you get too much money, that money and too much power, it will corrupt. And that's why it's extremely important that the people take an interest in all these big, powerful organisations and do a little bit of homework. Like I said, follow the yellow brick road. If you look to who's funding all these organisations, you'll often find it's the same people. And that's a concern. It's why I think that it's really, really important to, support radio stations like yours. The community radio stations are really important. Why it's important to fund Wikileaks, because these are funded by the community directly, not by these big, powerful groups. Now, people will say, well, look, we don't want, some people will say we're not very happy with freedom of speech or some free press outlets like Wikileaks because they've been exposing people that we support, for example, Hillary Clinton and the DNC. Now, I can understand that people feel upset. No one likes to see the people that are their favourites being exposed as being corrupt. But what do you want? Do you want your people staying as corrupt? Is that what you're saying? Because that doesn't make sense either if you think that your people are the best people to lead us into democracy and freedom. I would say that the people best able to monitor their organisation are the people in it. That's why we have whistleblowers. And that and the people that, the same for the Trump supporters. You are best able to monitor your powerful entities. The people have got to monitor the powerful organisations they support, not just the ones they don't support. If these laws go through to clamp down on the press, and a lot of them are fake news media, I know that, and I can understand the frustration, but if the laws go in, you might be happy to say, oh, well, I don't like this media or that media, I'm happy they clamp down. But if precedent laws are set at some point in the future when your favourite person isn't in power, then you're going to get clamped down on. So really, I would like to see all people join together, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you are, and agree on one thing: to have a viable, independent, fierce, free media protected by the First Amendment in America and everywhere else if you can do it. Because it's the only chance that people have of containing corrupt power, regardless of where it's coming from.
Okay, we're talking with Christine Assange in Australia, the mother of Julian Assange. She's a freedom fighter. She's a big defender of a free press. I'm going to turn it over to Dennis.
And again, you are listening to a collaboration between Flashpoints and Live on the Fly. That voice was Randy Credico. We're speaking now with Mrs. Assange about what's happening with WikiLeaks. It was interesting. You're talking about it's not just corporate media. It's what they call public radio. For instance, Marketplace is probably the most listened to / watched public radio show in the world. It is sponsored on and off by Koch Industries. Could it be that a program on marketing, on finances, sponsored by Koch Industry is going to be fair and logical? It's interesting. On the show, they have this series called Interviews from the Corner Office. And I noticed this Koch support for Marketplace after the host there, Kai Rizdal, had a visit to the corner office of one of the Koch brothers. So what are your thoughts? Could you say a little bit more, Mrs. Assange, about how you respond to something like this? Could we possibly pay attention to finances as they are interpreted by Marketplace?
Well, my dad had a great saying. He said, in whose interest? Whenever you see anything happening, particularly in the media, governments doing this or some corporations doing that or some charities doing that, always ask yourself, in whose interest? Because self-interest, unfortunately, dictates most people's actions. So, particularly in the corporate world. So if a radio station is funded primarily by a big corporation, you've got to ask how much of what they're saying is independent. The same for state-sponsored media. I mean, in Australia, we've got the ABC, who's virtually the US Embassy in Oz, the Democrat Embassy in Oz, rather. It's just completely left-leaning, and I don't mean old left, I mean your liberal left-leaning, and it's funded by taxpayers, but it's run by the state. So, and you will find the opposite in other places. You've got to look at who's funding it, because its money is pulling the strings. But that's just the way it goes. And you have to, it doesn't mean you don't listen to them. It just means that you have in the back of your mind, this may or may not be true. You know, put your BS detector on, find out who's funding it. Now, there is something that's coming up that's a little interesting in terms of the First Amendment and WikiLeaks. Have you been following these Trump filings, Dennis?
No, but tell us a little bit about it, please.
Look, I don't know a lot about it because this happened, but apparently, you know, all this Russiagate rubbish that's on at the moment, after WikiLeaks
there's a private lawsuit going on, Dennis.
Yeah, and then there was the distraction, oh, well, it's Russia, to distract from what was actually going on, distract and divide. Well, two Democrat Obama lawyers have taken made an application against the Trump administration, a lawsuit, basically saying that they were colluding with the Russians. The Trump response to defend the Trump administration inadvertently is going to be protecting WikiLeaks if it gets through. The Trump filing argues under what's called the Bartnicki First Amendment test. So there's a court test. Does it pass the First Amendment test? And it passes the First Amendment test for two reasons. One is it newsworthy of public concern? Yes, it was newsworthy and a public concern that the Democratic National Committee was rigging elections within itself against one of its candidates. That's actually more about election interference than anything else, I would say, and various other things, colluding with the media, et cetera, and the pay-to-play stuff with Hillary Clinton. Secondly, the publisher is not involved in theft. Does it satisfy that test? Yes, it does, because WikiLeaks does not hack. WikiLeaks is a publisher. It receives. So it's quite a solid case for disbanding the WikiLeaks grand jury. I'm sure it wasn't put that way for that reason, but in defending themselves, they've defended WikiLeaks against a prosecution, and they've defended them under the First Amendment. So that's an interesting one to watch.
Randy, final question. Go on.
Okay. Well, where do I go from here? I want to say a couple of weeks back, I got to see your son, Julian, and he is in good health, good spirits. And, you know, it's amazing spending time with him because he has his wits, he has his commitment, he's very brilliant, and his sense of humor. He maintains this incredible sense of humor, very entertaining to be around. What do you ascribe all of those characteristics to?
His
mom, of course.
He's a unique force of nature. He's just lovely. He's got, well, look, because he understands the nature of power, he really understands it, and probably more than anyone else in the world, because he reads all those documents that no one else gets to see. No, everyone gets to see everything, because they don't release all of it. And I guess anyone who's been under it, you know yourself, you've just been under it. The only way that you can survive an onslaught like this is to have a wicked sense of humour. You don't survive otherwise. And he stands in his truth. He's very committed to something very deep and meaningful, and that is truth. Truth is the gateway to justice. And that's very solid grounding. It's not grounded in an ideology. It's actually grounded in a fact. Look, and on that note, I'd just like to make a comment about asking WikiLeaks. Look, first of all, thanking all the WikiLeaks supporters, the other WikiLeaks supporters who've been fiercely defending Julian all over the world, the lawyers, some of the journalists, and the people, of course. But I'd also like to have a little talk to the new WikiLeaks supporters. I mean, those of us who have been around for a long time know that Julian and WikiLeaks come under significant attacks and black propaganda from time to time to destabilise them. The last one was when Julian's Twitter account went down with some sort of Twitter glitch, and all of a sudden out come all the twitchy anti-WikiLeaks trolls all over WikiLeaks feed and our feeds, saying that Julian's been compromised, has been taken over by the CIA, WikiLeaks can't be trusted, don't fund them anymore, all this sort of nonsense, okay? I would ask the new WikiLeaks supporters not to buy into this. You may have your concerns. Of course we all do. Because we all love Julian. We want to defend him and protect him. But it is far better because WikiLeaks is actually at war. The US State Department and the Deep State have declared war on WikiLeaks. It was written in a US cable some years ago that the investigation into WikiLeaks was unprecedented in scale and nature. That was bigger than Bin Laden. My son is the subject of an investigation bigger than Bin Laden, okay? So you can imagine what forces here are up against. So I would ask the new WikiLeaks supporters, just hold the line, okay? Just wait. Wait till you hear from WikiLeaks. If anything happens to my son, don't you worry. I'll be out there screaming from the rooftop, all right? His friends, his colleagues, his lawyers, we will all let you know if anything's gone wrong. You don't have to worry about that. Have concerns, for sure, have concerns. But don't get sucked in by the anti-WikiLeaks propaganda that they've been taken over by this opportunistic response every time Julian has a day off Twitter. Julian is not a machine. He's a human being, and he's suffering under extreme detention conditions. No sunlight at all for 5 years, no vitamin D, no fresh air and no exercise. I don't know how he does it. But for goodness sake, if he has a couple of days off, don't freak out. If you are concerned, and good on you if you are genuinely concerned, do something practical. Make a donation to his legal defence fund at imwikileaks.org or join the WikiLeaks task force, now over 100,000 strong at WL Task Force. Or if you're artistic, join the WikiLeaks Art Force at WL Art Force. There's a lot you can do. Get on Twitter and defend him. Contact your local representative. Anxiety like that is non-productive when it's not put into action. We need WikiLeaks warriors, not WikiLeaks warriors. And you can get your WikiLeaks warrior gear from the WikiLeaks shop, and 100% of their profits go to WikiLeaks.
The coffee is much better in a WikiLeaks cup. Take it from me.
Oh, my God. All right. On non-commercial radio, that in the background is Randy Credico. We've been speaking with Mrs. Assange, Christine Assange, activist, warrior. It reminds me a little bit, hearing you talk, Mrs. Assange, reminds me of my mom. I remember when I was about 7 years old, she was a woman in the man's working world. And I used to sort of help her put on her makeup. And she used to refer to her makeup as war paint.
It's a little bit like that, isn't it? I mean, when you go to work, you put your uniform on, and once you put that on, whether you're a nurse or a policeman or any other uniform, that does put it. That kind of gets you in the mood, doesn't it? I agree. And there's some fantastic stuff at the WikiLeaks shop. There's some very funny stuff, really humorous stuff, very deep and meaningful stuff. Everything from T-shirts and hoodies and bandanas, and they've even got umbrellas and posters. And so have a look and support WikiLeaks and get some good merchandise as well.
Okay.
But no My Pillow, though.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Assange, Christine Assange, an honor to have you from somewhere in Australia. We thank you for joining us, and we hope we can continue this dialogue. I'm Dennis Bernstein with Randy Credico. This is a continuing collaboration between Live on the Fly with Randy Credico and Flashpoints National News.